everybody. It's your boy. We're here with an episode of VSW. Today, we have a very special guest. That's right, Rhett Titus. Welcome.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Here with the Versace Stoner himself on the VSW podcast, and I am happy to be here.
And we're happy to have you. I have to say, I don't know if you remember the match, but I do remember I was actually going through old footage because I go to a lot of shows, I film a lot of things. It was back in 21. It was one of those, shows that were just coming back from the pandemic, and it was you versus Alec Price in Beyond Wrestling.
Oh yeah, that was a really fun match. Alec Price, he's a great young kid. He, at that point, he hadn't really blown up as much as he is now, but he was just the former IWTV champion. He's a young, sparry kid, so he's got a good career ahead of him.
Yeah, and I mean that was just a very exciting match for both of you. I remember the match because it was, a high impact match. Both of you were very, agile in the ring. And I remember you with the entrance gear. That was very personable. You came out, it was, I believe, like a skull kind of a gear.
Yeah, I had a skull mask, from my time with the foundation. Was a group of pure wrestlers, and we had different little masks that defined our characters and all. So yeah, the it's a pretty badass mask, So it was actually made by a special effects guy that usually does like special effects and those types of things. So it's not a traditional like lucha mask. So it's it's pretty cool, pretty badass. I'm actually trying to sell it too. So if anybody's interested, just hit me up. Taking bids on it. So
That's great. That's great. And like I said, but that was, 2021. Now you've been obviously wrestling well before that. When did you get into pro wrestling?
oof, I mean, as a fan, getting into pro wrestling, man, probably I don't really ever remember a time where I wasn't watching wrestling. My first life memory that I can recall is playing with my action figures. I had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle figures, but I was pretending that one was Ric Flair and one was Sting. And Ric Flair slapped the figure four leg lock on and ripped the leg off right off the action figure. So, and then shortly after that, I got wrestling figures, but you couldn't really do a figure four leg lock with them anyways. But
which ones were you with? The Hasbro ones? The Hasbros were impossible. Now the LGN it kind of bent, but the Hasbro impossible.
No, yeah, the Hasbros were my first figures when I was a kid. I wound up getting some LGNs later on, but Hasbros were my generation. But yeah, so I started watching wrestling as young as possibly can remember, and then that's what I always wanted to do. I always wanted to become a pro wrestler, and so when I started getting older, I was like, well, I guess I should start getting in shape and start getting ready to do this. And when I was 17, I joined the Ring of Honor Training Academy. I was trained by Austin Aries, and then later on Bryan Danielson. And I started wrestling in January of 2006. So we're coming at the end of the month. We'll be coming up on my, what is that? 18 years or something like that. My 18-year wrestleversary. So a long damn time.
But wow, congratulations! And I mean, I think I'm kind of the similar way. I feel like we're almost in that same age bracket, and like I don't remember a time when I wasn't a fan. My earliest memory, I think, is like watching WrestleMania 2 somewhere on TV. But the figures are kind of what got me into it as well. And the toys, and I was big into the Hasbro, and later the magazines would become an important kind of role in my wrestling because it was the way for me to connect. Back then obviously there was no internet. There was no, let's run to online and find results. You had to wait for the monthly magazines to come out. So starting with Ring of Honor, now that's that's a notable name. It's a notable, very notable name. It's probably one of like the third or fourth major wrestling companies in the industry, if you were to rank them. And now starting with them right off the bat, did you feel kind of like overwhelmed? You got names already training you and such.
Yeah, well, it was definitely a experience, because you know my very first match was inside a Ring of Honor ring. They used to, it was during a dark match on the pre-show, so I was kind of thrown right into the fire, where people come to these shows and they expect to see the best talent, and here they are coming to the show, and the first match they see is a 18-year-old kid in his first match. But um, I don't think I disappointed. I had very good training, very good fundamentals and basics, so I didn't go out there and expose the business or anything like that. But you know, I would, cut my teeth on those Ring of Honor pre-shows, and I started getting booked, a whole bunch of other places, just kind of showing up and getting booked, and wrestling all over New Jersey, and driving here, driving there, wherever the case may be, just to get reps in. And I started kind of, getting building up some confidence in myself, and like, I'm like, man, like, I'm just doing all these pre-shows for Ring of Honor. I want to get like on the main show. I want to be like a real like wrestler here, And I I was looking around, and I'm like, man, like, I'm trying to be the serious wrestler, but you got like all these great technical wrestlers here, like Brian Danielson, Nigel McGuinness, Roderick Strong, Austin Aries. How, how, how am I supposed to compete with these guys? They've been doing it for years.
Yeah.
And I kind of looked around, and I was like, man, there's not a whole lot of like characters here. So and I was like, well, if I could kind of develop a character, maybe that will, help me stand out a little bit. And so I was thinking about that. And, one day I was WrestleMania weekend, the year that it was in Detroit, whatever WrestleMania that was. Once I, prior to getting into wrestling, I can tell you dates, times, places, from like my fandom, but after getting into wrestling, it's all blur, Um, but it was WrestleMania weekend, and I was coming down to the ring, and Adam Pearce used to like do the announcements from the backstage, to kind of rib wrestlers and stuff like that. And he was like, "Now coming to the ring, the sexiest man alive, Rhett Titus." I was like, I heard it, and I was just like, all right. And I just like started getting my Michael Hayes on, and just kind of started rolling with it. And then I came back, the next show, and I had like a robe, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna run with this, and just started really focusing on more character work to set myself apart from the rest of the pack.
Now, to backtrack a little bit, now going into that, like I said, starting in the Ring of Honor school and working their pre-shows, you didn't have to do the typical kind of indie stuff, I'm guessing. You didn't have to, you weren't working 3 or 4 shows a weekend, driving miles on end from multiple promotions. You were kind of just steadily in Ring of Honor, working with them exclusively at the time.
Um, no, Ring of Honor at the time would run 2 or 3 weekends out of the month, but whenever they weren't running, I was looking, okay, go, hey, hit this guy up. Oh,
So you were able to take
didn't,
local bookings, you were able to work the local scenes.
yeah, and I was doing a lot more than a lot of the other guys that were at the school. So that, and I started getting booked pretty regularly, on the independents, around New Jersey and the tri-state area. And, and it didn't really have to do with much of, my Ring of Honor fame. It was just kind of like me showing up and showing face, and then when I get an opportunity, just going in there killing it.
So kind of like, yeah, and then you like I'm saying, like I know I said I only ask because you hear a lot of guys, now striving to get into Ring of Honor, where you kind of were like homegrown in there and kind of bloomed from within.
Yeah, yeah. But at the same time, I was still, driving the ring truck and setting up the show, tearing the show down. Doing security at the shows. You go back and
Yeah,
watch a lot of those old shows. You'll see me, doing crowd control or and
yeah,
I
it's
had
not just sign up. Oh, you're going to be on TV next week. You have to still,
yeah,
the training. You still have to do out there,
no,
your
yeah,
fundamentals to be cleared to get on those pre-shows,
yeah.
to get in front of the crowd and so forth.
So
Were the trainings real? Would you say the trainings were extensive? Like, were they really hard? Hard, I don't know what the word really would be. Were they like hardcore training done?
I mean, I'll never forget like my first day going to the Ring of Honor school. It was it was my tryout to even get into the school, and this was when CM Punk was still the head trainer. So CM Punk and Samoa Joe held the tryout, and I was 17 years old, and I was just like, all right, my dad had to bring me and like sign a waiver, and I just remember being like, hey, whatever happens, I'm just not gonna quit, and I was not in good shape whatsoever, but um, all of a sudden they're like, all right, let's do Hindu squats, 500, and I was just like, okay, and I don't even really up until that point, maybe, you know, I don't think I ever did any Hindu squats before. So it was 500 Hindu squats, but I just wouldn't quit. It was 100 and something push-ups. It was, 100 sit-ups, sprints, lunges. I couldn't walk for a week afterwards. Literally, I was going to my classes in school, going up and down the steps, and having to like pull myself up the stairwell because my legs just weren't working. But and I remember just thinking, oh my gosh, like I got to do that every day. Oh. Um, but then when Austin Aries took over, he was kind of like, hey, I'm here to be your wrestling trainer. I'm not your personal trainer. You can do that on your own time. And which I respected. Because it made sense to me. But he's like, not saying that you're not gonna have to earn your way into this ring, which we did. We still had to do all the squats and all that stuff, but he was more so focused on the wrestling training. And then fast forward to Brian, where you know. It was kind of back to doing a lot of squats and a lot of stuff. And by the time Brian got to be trainer, I had a full time job at that time, so I would always go to work and then, drive over, it was like an hour and a half from work. So after work, I would drive over there and, it would always be rush hour and that sort of stuff. And, I'd always wind up being like, so Brian would always, 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 always make me do extra stuff, extra squats, and I was just like, oh my God, goodness, this is crazy, and I remember one day, um, I got out of work early. I was like, this is great. I'm going to be on time today. And, I'm driving there and then all of a sudden I hit traffic and I'm just like, oh no, like, and so I'm like, you know what? I'll get dressed in the car while I'm here in traffic, so I don't have to. Because like practice started at like 5 o'clock, like on the dot. Like it was, if you weren't in the ring at 5 o'clock, you were late. So I was driving, and I'm like, you know what? Let me just get dressed in the car now. So I'm putting my boots on, putting my knee pads on, all that sort of stuff. And I pull up to the school. It's like 4:58, and I'm running into the school, hop up there, and I climb into the ring, and I get in there just in time. And he's like, "Oh wow, Rhett, you made it on time today." I'm like, "Oh yes, yes, it wasn't easy, but I did." And we start, and then all of a sudden he's just like, "Stop!" The screen stop. Everyone looks at him like, he's like, "Who is dragging dirt into the ring?" And everybody looks around at the bottom of their feet, and I already knew the answer. And I looked down to the bottom of my feet, and of course, there's dirt on the bottom of my shoes from having to run from the car into the school. And I wind up having to do all the extra exercises and everything anyway. So, but yeah, even though I would always be late, it wouldn't deter me from going because I was able to learn a lot and have a good time doing it.
Yeah, and to really kind of step on what you were talking, you were talking about the training and that I think the stamina training, the physical training, the squats, the laps, the running, all of that is just as important as the wrestling training.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I didn't get into pro wrestling. Unfortunately, I tried. I'm a little small stature, and at the time, I wanted to get in. They were just like, no, not happening. Had I tried maybe today, maybe I would have, things would have been different. Schools are different, trainers are different. But anyways, I went into amateur boxing, and very similar to, pro wrestling, there is that line of both. You got your boxing training where you're learning your combos, you're learning all your skills, but then you have to keep up with the other aspect of it. And I remember I joined this team training program, and it was 2 hours long every, twice a week, I think. And, for the first hour and a half, it was okay, 100 squats, 100 push-ups, 200 sit-ups, laps, this, that. And then the last half, and I was like, okay, put your gloves on. We're going to do some boxing now. And it's what? Wait, everyone's tired, fatigued, and
but my arms feel like rubber.
That stamina that you needed to get. And I think, wrestling is the same way. Later on in life, I would get in the ring. I would, play around. I would say, I had a few, friends that were in the industry, bring me and show me a few things. So we did, some dark matches and fun stuff like that for the camera. And it was the same thing, that stamina. If you didn't have it, it was that 2 or 3 minutes or whatever you're doing feels like I was on it. Do you find it hard keeping up with all of that? You got your regular training, wrestling training, then you get your work, and then whatever else you do, and it's do you find that hard to kind of balance everything?
I mean, at first it was, anything new is going to be hard, and especially at the time, I had my first son when I was 17, when before I even wrestled my first match. So, throw that into the mix with all that other stuff too.
Oh, wow.
It becomes extremely difficult. But you know, uh, I've never been shy or scared of hard work. I just always knew that I was going to have to work a little bit harder than the next person because of all these things. And but definitely when I was younger, it was you know a lot harder because at the time I didn't enjoy working out. I didn't enjoy sweating and stuff because I had come from being a fat kid. So I was always a fat kid growing up, so heavy set, and I would always say like, "Oh man, like I can't wait till I get out of wrestling. I'm just gonna stop going to the gym and get real fat and eat whatever I want." And then somewhere along the way, I'd say probably about probably about 10 years ago, I was just like, man, I love working out, and you really develop a love for working out and getting in good shape and getting a pump and just the whole experience of going to the gym.
Now, let me ask you something though, because I mean, me growing up, I saw plenty of wrestlers that weren't in, I would say, good shape. You had people like King Kong Bundy, K Stacks Calhoun. You had these guys. What made you want to even get into that shape when you could just say, the hell with it, let me just learn the wrestling and kind of just, fake the rest of it? What made you want to get the physique? What made you want to get that?
Well, it's funny because as a kid, we play WrestleMania 2000. That was like the first time like you could create a wrestler or whatever, or maybe it was Warzone the first time you could create a wrestler. But whenever I create my wrestler on the video game, I'd always have like a T-shirt on, and like whenever I would like imagine myself as a wrestler or draw myself as a wrestler, would have a T-shirt on, and then like I remember specifically because I was playing football and we would work out during football, and it would be one of those things where I hated it, and like when the coach wasn't looking, I'd be taking reps off and like slacking and stuff like that and just getting through it. And then when I originally went to that Ring of Honor tryout, I was 230 pounds, and I was like, I left there and I was like, well, if I'm going to be doing this every day, I'm going to have to get in a lot better shape. So I started joining the gym, and then I started seeing progress. And I was just like, for the first time ever in my life, I saw like a little bit of like abs. I was like in my top two abs. I was like, oh my gosh, I want a six pack, and it kind of just morphed from there. And like before I know it, like I was down to like 185 and I was like shredded, and I remember I had bumped into CM Punk at one of his last Ring of Honor shows before he went to WWE. It was like the next time I seen him since the tryout, and I was like, hey, and he looked at me like he didn't know who it was. And I was like, hey, it's Rhett from the tryout, and he's like, what the hell happened to you? I was like all like kind of proud to like be like, oh, I've been working out, and it's like, are you sick? I'm like, no, I've just been working out, but yeah, it's like one of those things, where you just once you start seeing a little bit of results, and I tell this to people all the time, who are on a weight loss journey or trying to get in better shape, results are addictive, so if you start seeing something, it's just gonna snowball, and you're like, wow, I want more, I want more, I want more, and as you can see, if you follow my wrestling career over my 18 years, it's just like, you know, most people, they get older, they get in worse shape, but as I've gotten older, I've just gotten into better shape. And, with that being, you learn more about your body, you learn more about working out, you learn more about what works for your body and what doesn't work for your body, and also what works for your diet and doesn't work for your diet, how you react to certain foods and certain, if you like, some people react better to carbs, some people react better to fats. So you learn this all over the years, and it's a whole big trial and error, but I have it down to a pretty good science right now.
That's awesome. No, that is great. I can say, myself, I'm always, kind of one of those ones that would kind of play with, what kind of works diet. And I remember, when I was doing the whole boxing thing, I would get very excited when I would, because when I came into it, I was overweight, but I wanted to be what weight class and weight class, and very serious and amateur, or I'm very serious in boxing in general. It's not like a kayfabe thing. You have to weigh what it says, and they're not going to let you compete.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get to certain levels, and I remember working towards it, and then I hit it, and I was like, wow. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go even further and do the next. And like I went even lower. I was like, wow, I can do this. And you feed off those results like no tomorrow.
Yeah, and like, you know, people people like have trouble like, eating not eating certain things, but like once you start living a healthy lifestyle and you're eating good food, you feel so much better, and like, you look at this food and you're like this junk food and you're like, man, I don't even want that anymore, because when you
You
do eat it,
do.
then you
I mean,
feel hard.
when I was doing that, and probably some years after, probably my cleanest eating, I would say, I would say my eating hasn't been the best, but I mean, you get older, and it's kind of things can kind of get hard. Life gets hectic. You got to just remember to take that time. That what you eat is very important. It's another part of that whole system of making you whatever you want to be, what you put in your body. As far as food, are you eating a lot of fast food or processed foods? Or are you eating a lot of, whole foods or plant-based foods that are going to bring you, sustainable energy and more, alertness, or stuff that's going to cloud you? I think a lot of people also forget about that, as well as that stamina training when they think, pro wrestling. A lot of them just think, oh, what's on TV, or let's do flips and moves. But there is a whole system to this, diet, this, that. It's like any other athlete in general. You have a whole system in place to make it whole.
Yeah, and like some of the stuff that I do nowadays, like I couldn't imagine doing. Like I remember it was like 2009, and Chris Hero was telling, like, this was when Chris Hero got in really good shape, and I was like, oh yeah, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I Alex Shelley put me onto this intermittent fasting. And I was like, what's that? And he's like, oh, basically you fast for 18 hours and then you eat afterwards, and so on. And I'm like, oh man, I could never do that, and now, like, fast forward all these years later, I mean, I fast every day. It's just,
Yeah, I
it
mean,
feels.
that's actually, it's funny you say that's actually what works best for me, is when I can actually, intermediate fast. I mean, the only issues I have to do is I have to drink more water. I don't drink enough water, so then I end up getting hungry. I end up getting like kind of imbalance. But when I do everything proper, I'm a big fan of, like, that whole wait, and kind of just, and it works really well. My body ends up having more energy in the day. I end up feeling better. But again, if you told me that 20 years ago, I would look at you and shake my head as well. Like, what do you mean? I'm not going to wake up and eat? I'm not going to eat what? How much? How
Yeah,
long? No way.
yeah, and for 7 years now, I've been a vegetarian too. And like I remember Austin Ayers, he was my trainer and he was a vegetarian. I remember just being like, oh man, how does he do it? And then like all of a sudden, I saw that What the Health documentary, and I was like, all right, I'm not eating meat no more. That's it. No more for me. And my wife was like, yeah, okay, like sure, we'll see how long that lasts. And fast forward 7 years later, here I am, still like disgusted at meat.
That's great. That is wonderful. Again, very, very similar stuff. I said, when I jumped into that journey, and again, I jumped in not at a young age. I jumped in almost close to the 30 mark. So I was almost like out of the, amateur and into like the master division. But I ended up going vegan for like 5 years,
Oh
and
wow.
going and giving up even the cheese, the dairy, and all of that. And doing that with the fasting and everything, I was like at peak prime energy. It's just like a
Oh
machine.
yeah.
I ended up going back and forth now with the whole meat thing. And it's not that I even like miss meat, it's just honestly it becomes something of like, again, it goes back to taking the time for yourself. I end up, it just becomes easier just to get something with the meat, or because it's more accessible or quicker to cook or whatever it is, and I don't want to make the time to do the other steps that it would take to replace it. I'm not really a big fan of like the fake meat products or all that. You know, um, uh, you know, like fake chicken nuggets and all that. If I'm gonna do, vegan, or I'm gonna do vegetarian, I like to do, like lentils, or do something that I make myself. I used to make my own veggie burgers, with lentils, rice, mushrooms. Very
Mm-hmm.
simple, very healthy, very effective. But again, it's taking the time for yourself, and it's taking the time to do these things. And then when you kind of lose that, it's like, it's just easier for me just to order a cheeseburger. Okay, and
Yes.
again, it's just remember, you need to take the time to feed yourself right.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays, compared to like, let's say like 10 years ago, there's so many more plant-based options, like if you're stuck in a jam, you can literally go to, just about any fast food place, and like, they're gonna have some sort of option there, so it's a whole lot easier, I I mean I'm the way I have it set up is I fast, all throughout the day, and then like at like 8 o'clock at night, around 8, 9 o'clock at night, it's chow time, and like from like that time until like 12 at night, usually maybe one is just like depending on how late I'm up is it's just like my feeding time, and it's just like I was originally trying to go vegan, but kind of going back to what we were talking about before. Vegan is a very carb heavy diet, and my body doesn't really react well to carbs. So, had I gone vegan, I probably wouldn't really be able to keep up with my physique the way I would like. So,
I'll tell you what I did, what I ended up doing to avoid that, because the carbs were concerned with me too, because I was trying to drop weight at the same time. I ended up, which is incredible and kind of crazy, but I ended up doing a gluten-free vegan diet, which was just very restrictive. But it gave me a lot of different choices for the pasta. So I was using like quinoa pasta and stuff.
oh
And
wow.
it did counteract that carb heavy kind of diet. But again, it's not for everybody. And again, it all depends on why people are vegan. I know some people are in it for environmental reasons or for the animals themselves. Some are in for health. Like my mom, she went vegan at the same time, and she's stuck with it, and she hasn't turned back since. And she loves it. And again, depending on why, there's certain things you can eat. Like she'll eat fish. She enjoys some fish once in a while. So I mean, you kind of work what works for you into that diet. But yeah, definitely it can be carb heavy, and depending on which way you go, it can be even more unhealthy, because there is, like I said, a lot of processed alternatives out there, even at the most fast food restaurants. And it's like, okay, yeah, it is vegan, but is it good for you? Probably not. But again, it goes back to taking that time. But let's go back a little bit now to the wrestling. So you started going, now you're in Ring of Honor, you're making a name for yourself, you're collecting gold even. How you feeling at that point about your career? It's starting to flourish.
I mean, it was leading up to the first time I ever won a title in Ring of Honor. Was the Ring of Honor World Tag Team Championships. It was a very surreal moment, because to hear somebody who went to the very first Ring of Honor show as a fan, and absolutely loved Ring of Honor and was just wanted to wrestle for Ring of Honor. Like that was like my goal, and then here I am, in Hammerstein Ballroom, teaming with Kenny King to beat Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin, two guys that I, watched on WWE TV for the Ring of Honor World Tag Titles. And like, it was just like, wow, like, man, like I really made it, like I really went and did it, and then, but all that happiness was very short lived because, about 2 weeks later, Kenny King showed up on Impact. We had different lengths in our contracts, so his was a year and mine was a year and a half, and he got an opportunity from Impact, and he went and did it. And I never, held no ill will against him for any of that, but he wound up getting fired from Ring of Honor, and we got stripped of the World Tag Team titles. And up until this point, I was very focused on being a tag team wrestler, and I wasn't really focused. I kind of took the gas pedal off of being a singles wrestler. So every thought I had in my head was about the tag team and making the tag team better. And then all of a sudden it's just like, oh well, he's gone. You're back to square one, and it was a very deflating.
Kind of a harsh reality of the industry in a way.
Yeah,
Sometimes things just happen, the show goes on.
yeah, and it's crazy because being in a tag team, it's sometimes it can be doesn't even have to be something that you did or something that happened to you that affects the tag team. You know, you could do everything right, and then all of a sudden, a decision somebody else makes affects the both of you. You know, and it
Or even
affected.
injury, even injury can happen.
Yeah,
That's another, unseen thing. And if your partner's injured, you're not wrestling in a tag match.
yeah. It's I didn't even think about that. But yeah, it's crazy. So I kind of was trying to find maybe some um other tag team partners, and for a long time it was very hard to kind of match the chemistry that I had with Kenny King, and uh, and then it was about 9 years later where myself and Tracy Williams actually won the Ring of Honor World Tag Team titles again. That was a very long 9 years. To get back to that point, and it was like, wow, like, you know, uh, um, I'm back like where I belong. It was a very long journey to get here, but I never gave up, never quit, never doubted myself. I was always just like positive and just always focused on, setting goals and trying to achieve them. And yeah, and we were Ring of Honor tag team champions, and it was going great, and it was like, wow, like this is how it was supposed to be with Kenny. And then all of a sudden, Tracy Williams is walking his dog one day, and he gets hit by a car, you know, um, and he can't wrestle. And yeah, so once again, the Ring of Honor World Tag Team titles, left our grasp, and it was, based off of something that it's not my fault, it's not his fault, but it's just something that happens, and I was like, wow, maybe I'm not cut out for these tag teams. Maybe I should go in on my own. Maybe I'm better off as a singles wrestler because, much like in like team sports or, um, sports where you're kind of on your own, like, um, sometimes, you could be playing a great game and then your team still loses, or in like the sport wrestling, like, not pro wrestling, but like scholastic wrestling, it's one on one, even though there's a greater team score, most of the time you're just kind of focused on yourself and wrestling your own match, so I was like, hey, yeah, cool. Let's be a singles wrestler. And I with that plan in motion, I actually wound up capturing the Ring of Honor World Television title. And that was another bittersweet moment because it was actually the last um, Ring of Honor show under the Sinclair Broadcasting Group, and the next day I was released from my contract. So here I am with this championship, but nowhere to defend it, and Ring of Honor was no longer going to be in business.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's the thing though. But let me ask you something. Just go back. A quick question. Would you say overall in your career, would you prefer being a tag wrestler or a singles wrestler?
Oh man, it, it's a hard question because I really love the art of tag team wrestling. But for reasons like I explained, singles have a lot more benefits, because like I said, you don't have to focus on anybody else. You kind of just got to focus on yourself. So it's a hard question, because like I said, I love tag team wrestling. I one of the reasons why I love tag team wrestling so much is because I was benefited the experience of having Jim Cornette as my boss, and he would agent a lot of our tag team matches and tell us what to do, what not to do, and learning from somebody like that, you pick up real quick, real easy, and so I have all this tag team knowledge in my mind and all this tag team experience that I've had over the years, but no tag team partner. So, at the end of the
No,
day,
I agree. And, like, I'm a big fan as well of tag team wrestling. That's kind of, one of the things I even remember as a kid. And being a lot of good tag teams, you had contenders like Heart Foundation, Demolition, Rockers, Cam Mammoth. You had all these tons of names, British Bulldogs. And some of them, would go on later to have great singles careers. Some of them would just fade a bit. For me, it was always an art tag team, and it still is an art today if it's done right. And I'm very opinionated about tag teams. One thing I can't stand in tag team wrestling is makeshift tag teams. I like tag teams to be tag teams. I like them to work together. I like them to look similar, at least in gear. Have a matching move or two. Have a similar gimmick. Don't just be two, top stars thrown together unless it makes sense for a story. Just continuously go out there to face two other top stars. I like good tag teams, that work together, and you get that good chemistry and that good rhythm. And it is a true art to be able to tag with somebody and pull it off with that, all working together.
yeah, kind of like my biggest pet peeve with tag team wrestling nowadays, is that a lot of times people don't follow the tag team rules. That was, you see, the whole point is, you're supposed to come in when you're tagged, not whenever you feel like it or whenever your opponent's in danger or just to set up a spot or something like that. Which was really cool when Tracy Williams and I won the Ring of Honor tag team titles again. We were able to enforce the pure rules, so we were able to have pure rules tag matches where had to be holding the tag rope, must be hand to hand tags, no back tags. You'd only get so many rope breaks slash pinfall breaks or submission breaks. So if you were to break up a submission or pinfall after you expended all of them, you were disqualified. Match is over. So it was really cool, kind of trying to reset tag team wrestling that way.
No, most definitely, most definitely. And so like I said, all this is going on, and and then the whole world was struck with tragedy, in 2020. Wrestling I feel got impacted a lot and heavy. At least in my area, in New England, it was shut down completely. How did that affect you? How did it affect your mental state? Were you able to wrestle then? Were you able to train then, or was it kind of shut down for you as well?
I mean, it was shut down, yeah, because Ring of Honor was not running any shows. They were like, hey, we're gonna pay you guys while we're out, but we can't be running shows until we figure out a safe way to do it. And they wound up constructing a system sort of like the NWA bubble where we would go to a hotel and we'd sit in the hotel for a few days. We weren't allowed to leave or nothing like that. And then we would have to be COVID tested and like twice. And, we obviously you had to pass them, and they would change the ring mat after each match and wipe down the ropes after each match and clean the turnbuckles and everywhere after each match. And it was just like a long day of filming because of all these extra steps we had to take. No fans were allowed, so you're literally wrestling for nobody, no energy from the crowd. But the other thing too is, I would like leading into the pandemic, I was a gym two time a day guy. I loved going to the gym, and I just love the atmosphere, love the environment there. And then all of a sudden, gyms are closed, and it's like, well, I got this set of dumbbells here, like, what am I supposed to do, you know? And luckily, I was driving down the street one night and I saw this weight bench on the garbage. Somebody was throwing out a weight bench, and it had like a preacher curl attachment to it. It had like a leg extension attachment to it, and I was like, "Wow, like this is mine." And like because everything was so crazy at the time, like I had to like go get wipes and wipe it down before I brought it home, and I set it up in my backyard. I was like, "Oh wow!" Like I couldn't have been happier. And then, like, no lie, a week later, after that, the guy who lives across the street from me was moving out, and he just so happened to have a bunch of workout equipment that he was throwing out. So I was able to like get a pull up bar, dip station, and bring that into the backyard. And I was able to set up a whole little gym in my backyard. And I was like, wow, I never want to go back to the gym. So, but like, obviously, it was like freezing cold out for some of that time too. But I would just put on layers and layers of clothes and just, head out there and, gloves and snow hats and the whole 9 yards. And also, in a way to kind of like try to help give back to people, who may not have the knowledge of how to work out without machines or how to do fitness at home or anything. I started doing a series called Flex with Rhett on my YouTube and all my social media accounts where I would run people through workouts that you could do at home with weights, no weights, or whatever the case may be, just so that people, had something to do to keep them active, because so many people just, use that time during the pandemic to, well, I guess I'm just gonna drink a bunch of booze and eat a bunch of food and watch a bunch of shows on Netflix, and when
Definitely was, a really weird time.
you didn't have to do that.
With not being able to get out, not being able to do, even being afraid, to go out at some points or sometimes, like I said, being in lockdowns, being, here and there, I have people that were, high priority, not like can't get sick at all. So I wasn't able to even go out much myself, but seeing people, like I said, I watched a lot of YouTube at the time. I just when I started to come up with the idea of VSW, I started in my head, how I wanted to do things when wrestling came back and so forth. But I did watch a lot of things, and it's very inspiring to see how people, and I always like hearing the stories how people, took this really negative experience of the pandemic and kind of brought positivity to it, how they overcame it. And, it's not like, you were still able to, stay in fit shape and not let, it, kind of destroy that, at least that part. And not only that, like you said, you were able to give back and, and show others how that it can be done at home too. And I remember watching it. I don't know if I watched yours specifically, but I do remember watching a lot of like kind of workout videos. I didn't have equipment. I didn't have weights. I didn't have anything, but I didn't want to put on these extra pounds. I didn't want to just become, you know, like I said, it was very easy just to sit there and just eat and watch TV and movies and just be very unmotivated because there's nothing going on in the world. And there's nothing to watch. And it was just like this very sad part, And like I said, coming from a time when I was very, very busy, I was just trying to pick up things with going to shows and kind of capturing. I do a lot of shorts. And so it was like I said, going to a lot of shows. I had just went, Beyond had a show, BT Dub and Evolve actually had their last show that I wouldn't even know would be their last show at the time, but I remember going to that and I had like 2 shows that week, and then all of a sudden there was like no more shows, no more nothing. So everything was just shut off.
Yeah.
And like at first, people were joking and it was like, oh, we'll be back to it in about a week. Weeks turned to months and months turned to a year. But I always like to, like I said, hear how people kind of got through it and what they did and what inspired them. And did they stay with it, or did they let themselves just totally, go and kind of get back to it? Myself, I had my son back in 2018. So 2020, he was about 2, and it was just like it was wild having a 2-year-old stuck in the house 24/7. For at least 3 or 4 months. I remember at least 3 or 4 months because I don't even know how long. My wife works at a daycare, so he was able to go with her, but she was out of work too for a while. They shut
Yeah,
everything down, so
yeah,
it was just us home, and it was wild times. But yeah, I always like hearing that.
yeah,
But then we got some light at the end of the tunnel. Wrestling would return, the world would open. Again, I saw you at one of those return kind of shows. I don't know if it wasn't their first show back, but it might have been the second or third. At the Beyond show. So you started taking bookings again across. Was Ring of Honor running at that time?
yeah, but they weren't like running like live shows. They would just kind of like we would go to the bubble. We would tape like for like essentially like 3 months worth of content, and then we'd be off for a few months, and we could take bookings in between. It just was that you couldn't take them like a week or two before, or if like somebody like that a show that you're on like had like wound up with COVID, you would have to be you'd be taken off the show. I remember there was like that one like what was it like the GCW collective where like a lot of people got COVID at or whatever, and like there was a few
Yeah.
Ring of Honor guys on that, and everybody who was booked for the um the show was taken off, just to be safe, But yeah, I was, trying to take some bookings and stuff and try to do it safely. And, because, I had, my son at home, he was born in 2019. So he was like a year younger than your son, so,
Yeah.
so it, yeah, it was just it was a different time, But yeah, I was, the other thing too is like you want to take the bookings because you don't want to show up to TV and like not having wrestled in 3 months and like go out there and have to put on like a 20-minute classic, and you're
Yeah, you need the ring time. You don't want to stay out of shape. But 21 was just a wild year in general. I remember just hitting it hard, like just soaking up as many shows as I could. I got as far out as like to Jersey, Pennsylvania line, going to that IWTV 100, and then all the way up, all the way to like the tip top of Maine, for Limitless and other shows out that way.
I
Just
actually
really, getting the whole scene of but it was
it's
such fun.
funny.
I even got out to the Boardwalk GCW, but it was dodging a lot of that. Just hoping you're not getting sick. You kind of watch the feed. Oh, 7 people sick from the show over the weekend. Better test before I go to the next show.
Yeah.
And kind of just being responsible. There was a few shows I couldn't go to. I got sick sometimes. Other times I was just kind of nervous. Other people were sick, and I had like 3 shows back to back to go and check out. I'm like, okay, which one do I want to lose the money on? Because I don't want to take risks. But wild time in 21, definitely, and really, like I said, that would be the launch of my product. And when I really want, the whole idea of VSW was to get eyes and hands on the scene. I learned in 2000 when I started getting the indie scene was 2017, 18. I'd always been a fan of pro wrestling. Took a break from watching TV wrestling around 2003, though. The PG era, and that I'm not PG era. The PG era, the ruthless aggression era was okay, but I was at an age where I was just trying to, make a career. I was trying to do other things. I didn't have time for wrestling. Not like I did in the Attitude Era. Attitude Era, I was still in high school. My buddies would be talking about everything. It was just so much different. Now everybody went their separate ways, and there was no time for wrestling. I took a lot of time just not watching, and then just never got into the PG era after that. But around 2017, I would get into the indie scene, checking out a local show, and then I would start watching WWE again, then, AEW, Ring of Honor, New Japan, Impact. I would soak it as much up as I could and just make up for lost years. But, around that 2018-19 era is when I realized, indie wrestling is really good. The only difference is no one's watching it. It's because no one's seeing it. It's not getting on TV. But a lot of these matches are really well told and really well put together. So I started doing, an program where, take a lot of footage. My shorts program was doing good on YouTube. I would try to get interviews with wrestlers, and my main purpose, eyes and ears on that independent scene. And it's just been, it's been a wild ride. And I just remember 21 really, like I said, kicking it off. 22, 23, would be good too, but it would be different. Now you yourself, I said you would come back, you were doing that, you were doing the tapings. Then Ring of Honor would merge, right, with AEW?
Yeah, well, not necessarily merge. So basically, Ring of Honor released everybody from their contracts, and at that time they kind of put out some feelers if anybody was interested in buying the company, and then Tony Khan actually went up buying Ring of Honor. So now it's you know, a AEW, an extension of AEW.
Did you end up going with them?
So I mean, I was still a TV champion, so I came in and to their first pay-per-view, and I wrestled Minoru Suzuki for the TV title, and I dropped the title to Suzuki, and then it was kind of used me sporadically here and there, and then they started launching the Ring of Honor TV on the Honor Club again, and they started bringing me back for that. So they use me sporadically here and there. Not signed to them or anything like that. Would I like to be? I would love to be. Because Ring of Honor has always been my home, and if there's a Ring of Honor, every incarnation of Ring of Honor, I've been a part of it somehow. So kind of, I would love to be there all the time. So watching from the outside, definitely stings a little bit, but happy to see it continue and go on though, because
You're still very much active today. You're still very much involved. You're still in the ring.
yeah, it's funny that we were talking about the pandemic and going back to wrestling shows, and you live in Maine.
No, I live in Mass.
Okay, but close enough to Maine, I guess, because Maine was actually I did an indie show in Maine with one of our mutual friends, Luke. Me and Vinny Pacifico wrestled him and his partner the competition, and that was actually the first time I caught COVID was up there. Um, so it was like one of those things where the whole locker room wound up getting it. It's like that the Facebook page, you'd see like, oh man, I just tested positive for COVID. Oh man, and so it's like, oh man, all these guys are testing positive, and then I remember it just like I was working out in my backyard, and I did my first set, and I was like winded, and I was like, oh, that's weird, I'm winded after the first set, and then like I went inside and I was eating, and I was like, this doesn't taste like anything. This is pretty weird. And then I started thinking about, oh no. And like I grabbed one of my wife's like, Bath and Body Works candles, and those ones that like smell like crazy. I'm like, and I couldn't smell it. No, I was like, oh man. And I told my wife, and she was like, oh no. And that was my first time with it. So the first time's always the worst time, because like at that time, it was like, if you get COVID, you're gonna die. So
Yeah, it was crazy. My whole family would end up catching it at the end of 2020, and we'd catch it a few more times. But that first time was just very scary. Like ended up somehow one of us was at one of our parents' house, the other ones were at the other. So we ended up having to quarantine from each other, even though we all had it. It was very bizarre, and they had a 30-day quarantine period for my son for no reason. So like we didn't see each other, me and my wife, my kid, for like 30 days. It was nuts, totally nuts. But like I said, we catch it then, and it was like people were just really strict, and luckily, with the variants, it went in a better direction where people would get less sick and not so severe. But those early days were very scary, very very scary. Speaking of our mutual friend Luke, have you ever to watch this movie?
what, the Kill City Cup?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I watched it. I watched it live when it played on YouTube when it got released.
What'd you think of it? Pretty good, right?
I mean, I thought it was pretty cool. It was definitely different, definitely like you know, not your typical wrestling show, but I thought it was cool, it if it's just all about getting it to people, getting in the right hands of people that like can, really do something with it. You know what I mean? Like, um, if like let's say like some sort of streaming company, saw something like that, they'd be like, "Oh wow, like we could put this on our streaming network. It'd probably be a lot cheaper to make this than to make a new you know 12 episode series of some sort of show that's on Netflix or something like that." But yeah, no, I saw it. I thought it was cool. It was definitely different. Uh, and it's just about the right people seeing it. I did my best to try to share it and you know let other people see it that may have not seen it, but um, yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. Did you get to see it?
Yeah, I love seeing the creativity, and that's one thing that, that kind of got me through, and I'll say through the pandemic era of things is when wrestling came back and I started seeing all these tapings, and then I started to see real creative tapings. Like I remember seeing one, I forget the promotion, but it was pro wrestling with the sounds of like Mozart in the background and stuff, and it was this really nice cinematic, clean wrestling. WWE started their cinematic wrestling. You would have the Undertaker match, you'd have that Bray Wyatt match, you could have multitude of cinematics added into WWE. And other, independent promotions would throw things in. That's what kind of Kill City Cup reminded me of, brought back of that kind of era where there was this great creativity, just using what you were, had, and it took wrestlers that you would never have thought would even go together, threw them together, made it work, and made it fun, interesting. You kept it under, in a very good time period. It wasn't like a dragging 3 hour show. It was a nice, like I think, hour and a half. Really just taking all the essences. And now I always talk about Hill City now because for a while I got in a rut of everything being kind of similar, same. Independent wrestling there is not really exclusive. You don't unless the promoter brings the one up or two up, two one up. Everybody in the on the roster is most likely going to be at a next show tomorrow or next week. Nobody's really exclusive. Nobody has the contract. Nobody has that power or money or whatever. Um, so things can kind of get still. You start seeing the same matches. You start seeing patterns. But when so I got very kind of still there. When I saw Kill Sale, I was thinking, because it's something totally different, something totally not out there right now, and it kind of refueled everything. Like, wow, this is really interesting. I'm gonna start, interviewing some of their guys and talking to them and starting getting into the creative work. I went up to a convention up there. I met Mason X and Queen Chia and some of the characters. A lot of fun, but I always talk about it because it did kind of reinvent even myself. It's another one of those inspiring pieces. But yeah, I mean, like I said, we had that nice mutual friend Luke. He actually asked me a question. Um, it was, see if I remember it now. Probably gonna screw it up, but how that was. He was who was the greatest Cash Money Records rapper?
Oof, oof, oof.
He says you were really like big into like that, like I would say 99 2000 era, the back
Oh
that
yeah.
ass up era.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That I mean, I remember my freshman year of high school. I had that Cash Money Millionaires medallion that I bought at the mall for like $30. I thought I was like, you know, the coolest person in school, and then one of the cubic zirconias fell out of it, and I wasn't that cool anymore. um, but man, uh, you know, I mean, coming from, you know, where he was back then into where he is now. I mean, you can't really say any of them are better than Lil Wayne. He's definitely, because he just was like the little brother of Cash Money, but then he became a megastar, the most popular one of them all. Um, but you know, a lot of people slack on Manny Fresh, but I really enjoy Manny Fresh, not only just for his beat making, but he has some clever lines too. He always gives me a nice chuckle, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Birdman, baby himself.
Yeah,
So
I mean, myself, I got really big into Cash Money. I was big into Juvenile. I was actually a senior in high school when that album dropped, so it was like really big, really popular. Popular with all the kids. Everybody was partying to that song back then and stuff, like I said.
oh
And
yeah.
then, later on, I would get more into it, start to follow, Birdman, Lil Wayne. I actually got to see them in Boston. I was a big fan of Lil Wayne, like, especially in the Carter 3 era, like, really just every song on that album just like banged, honestly. I can't think of a bad song on that album. And I
Yeah,
think also, part of Little Wayne, he did blow up, but he did a lot more collabs than any of the other people besides maybe Birdman. Birdman did a lot of collabs, but he did a lot of collabs. He jumped in with Jay-Z, he jumped in with other producers, he jumped in with other, rappers, where the other guys in Cash Money kind of didn't get that far out there.
yeah, they kind of a lot of those Cash Money guys kind of stuck to themselves for the most part. I mean, obviously, BG was in prison. Did he ever get out of prison yet? I don't even, I don't even know. But and then like Little Turk, whatever happened to him, you know. Uh, but and Juvenile, obviously Juvenile is gonna eat off of Back That Ass Up for the rest of his life, you know.
Yeah, that's that one
He,
hit wonder.
he had a few other hits, but none as big as Back That Ass Up. I mean, when that whenever that song comes on, look out, because I,
I got
you know,
another question, Fred. What would you say your greatest like Ring of Honor match was? And like, not even so much as like this one that left you at the end in this like total awe. Just like, wow, that was like a good match. I feel good. It was a good opponent. Like everything just was perfect.
oof, man, I had so many of them, but um, probably one of my definite favorites was it would be from Honor Takes Center Stage Night Two, and it was myself and Kenny King versus Jay and Mark Briscoe, and it was an absolute bloodbath, and I'll never forget. Um, there was one point in the match where me and Jay Briscoe were just covered in blood, and we're head to head, getting into it, going 1-2 back and forth, boom, 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 and he hit me back into the ropes, and as I came back, I hit him with a forearm right across his chest, and like you could just see the blood fly into the sky, and I remember on my way down, because center stage is a very tight building. This is where they used to tape WCW Saturday night and stuff like that. But the like all the like producers table was right there underneath hard cam. So as I hit him with that forearm, I remember looking over and I saw Jim Cornette hop out of his seat and throw his arms in the air in excitement. And I remember just laying there on the mat being like, yeah, we got him, like, I mean, if you have somebody who's seen as much wrestling as Jim Cornette hopping out of his seat and throwing his arms in the sky, you're doing something right. So,
Yes, yes. If you can make him pop, you have won.
yeah, but that'd probably be my my favorite match, and especially fast forward all these years later, where we're at now, definitely holds a lot more meaning to me.
Yeah, with all the tragedy and everything, I mean, just sharing locker room with those guys must be a real sentimental meeting. And especially like I said, we lost a lot of wrestlers, I feel like, in the last years and just in general. And it's sad, people don't get, people form a bond, a brotherhood. It becomes a family, especially when you're on the road with these guys constantly, more than your own family, it becomes your family. And it affects
Yeah,
everybody differently, it is more, it's more than the internet makes it out to seem. I feel sometimes the internet can be so, so kind of just, it just makes things worse for, incidents or things where like back in the day when, tragedies happened, people mourned, it was just, might have been more private, but it felt more, sacred or more closed, whether it didn't have, it didn't have the, what happens in, society today, I find, you have tragedy, you got people mourning, and then you got, people that deal with their mourning through other avenues, whether it's jokes and funny things, and that's fine for them to do, but sometimes it offends other people, and then you got, funny memes and millions of funny memes going around, and some people are offended, some people, and it becomes more about the, the meme than it even becomes, about the memory of the person. It's just like, where before, like when Owen Hart died, for instance, people just were upset, they were sad, they talked about it, but there was no internet to kind of blow it up and throw it around
yeah.
and throw it in people's faces.
I guess social media can give any idiot a voice now, and you know, you anybody can say whatever they want, and without fear of, they can go on Twitter and curse somebody out, or disrespect somebody, or disrespect one of their loved ones without the fear of getting punched in the mouth. you know
Yeah,
so um social media is great for a lot of things, and the internet's great for a lot of things, but also it kind of twisted reality a little bit too, where some of these people got really comfortable saying things that they probably wouldn't say in person.
definitely, definitely. And I got one more, but I don't want to take too much of your time. Let me ask you. So now we just entered 24. What do you want? What do you want to do this year? What do you want to do in your career this year? Do you have any like big plans or aspirations?
Man, and he was born 12/12, and so I was getting ready to start hitting up and getting back out in the new year, and you know well, so my wife, she works a job with a hospital where she is does the billing or whatever, and she was supposed to be on family leave for the next like 3 months or whatever the case may be, and they actually, after originally approving her twice, um, you know right after Christmas, she was supposed to get her first check, and it was $0. And we called them up, and they're like, "Oh, actually, you won't be getting that money," even though she's paid into it for years and all that jazz. So, kind of left me at a trying time where, my wife had a C-section. I don't want her to go back to work, and but so right now I'm just hustling. I'm hustling as much as I can. So my goal for 2024 is to make as much money as I possibly can, so that my wife doesn't have to go back to work. So um, but yeah, and just in reality, I just want to be back with Ring of Honor full time. Still have a lot of friends there, and that's where my heart is. I love Ring of Honor, and I really want to be a part of it, and really give that old time Ring of Honor feeling to the new Ring of Honor.
Great. We can't wait to see what 24 does have in store. We do hope you make lots and lots of money. If you have merch and stuff, where can we buy it? Can we buy it
I mean, you can go to prowrestlingtees.com/Rhett Titus ANX. That's RHETTITUSANX. Or you can hit me up on Twitter at Rhett Titus ANX, same spelling. Facebook, um, Rhett Titus on Facebook, Instagram, same as Twitter as well. But yeah, I'm actually selling a bunch of my own merch and selling a bunch of old school Ring of Honor items as well. So I had a bunch of like old out of print Ring of Honor t-shirts that have been going for quite a bit of coin. A lot of people want to get their hands on some of this stuff. So, hit me up. I got selling my old tights, boots, whatever the case may
I
be.
have to go look at myself. I'm going to go shopping for merch myself. I have such a t-shirt collection. I can't do shirts. I got no room, but I could do trunks maybe or something else, boots maybe, but no more shirts. I got I think I counted almost 2,500 shirts, indie shirts. Just
Oh my
indie shirts.
goodness.
Ridiculous amount. I have no room. They're just stacked in piles.
It's,
And like
it's
I
funny.
said, that was what I did in 2020. I wanted to support guys. I mean, not only did it affect me, but I was friends with a lot of indie guys and a lot of people on my timeline. So I would see a lot of, people struggling. I'm just like, well, I mean, I can't just throw money. I'm not a millionaire, but I can buy merch.
Yeah.
So I would do these random drawings where I'd buy 5 keys a week or an indie shirt a day, and it just ended up spiraling where I would be buying all these shirts from Pro Wrestling Tees, especially when they would have sales. No free shipping and 20% off. I'd just stock up and buy 20, 30 shirts at a whack.
Oh,
But yeah, fast forward now, I have no room for shirts. But other stuff, yes, I can do.
It's funny. It's funny because my wife, every time we would move, she would try to get me to get rid of all my wrestling shirts, and I'd be like, no, 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 I gotta hold on to these, gotta hold on to these. I can't get rid of these, and it was it was these t-shirts that paid the mortgage. So
You never know. And that stuff adds up in value fast now, especially the figure game too. Some of those figures are worth a pretty penny now.
Yeah, I've had my figures for so long too that I'm not exactly ready to depart with those yet, because my son really likes them still too. So
yeah, the kid. I mean, I have a kid around the age, and I had a house fire back in 2010. Yeah,
oh no,
ago. So I ended up losing my Hasbro's and toys and my Legos and all that stuff. So another thing I did in 2020 was the only thing that was good. Well, 2 things that were good about the house fire. One is my house, my family photos and videos were safe. They didn't get destroyed and nobody got hurt. Anything else could be replaced, and most of it actually was. Well, not everything, but a lot of I did end up started recollecting figures in 2020 as well as a hobby, and I actually ended up picking up the first series of the Ring of Honor figures. Those are pretty cool.
oh wow.
I actually got the Briscoes. They're still in the package with Jay Lethal too. I have him as well. But yeah, and same thing with the AEW guys, and my kid, he loves to play with the elites, but the elites are so a lot of them are so fragile. So I ended up buying a lot of old LGNs because back in 2020 he was 3 years younger. So I bought a bunch of just used LGNs and let him start playing with those first because those can't break.
Oh no.
Now he's older. Now he can play with the more elite ones that aren't so breakable. But yeah, it was a wild time. But yeah, the figures are another thing too. All these things, but they do add up in value and they are collectible. Believe it or not. It's great though. But yeah, and like I tell people, always support wrestling because regardless whether it is the small keychain or the t-shirt or whatever it is, it helps. It's supplementary income, similar to guys and girls doing DoorDash, something else to make extra income. None of these guys that are on the scene are millionaires, really having making millions of dollars on the table. So it is just extra. So I do urge people to help if they can. And it's a great way. You get something. It's not like you're just throwing money in the air. You get cool merch. Sometimes, you know, something vintage even, you know, if you are collecting, you send, you know, you got old Ring of Honor stuff. I know a lot of people that like, you know, the older stuff, especially people that have, you know, watched Ring of Honor from its beginning, you know, in those early days, really are into the, you know, the history of it. You know, they even got shows on WWE with the treasure hunters, you know, going after these rare WWE vintage items. You know, it all started from just a collector buying it out of a magazine or buying it from, you know, somebody at a convention. And now it's worth, you know, tons of money. And it all starts by just supporting wrestling. But I do thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure. We've had a lot of great, you know, talking and really insight into the industry. And as I said, I didn't even know that much about Ring of Honor going into this. I've watched it, but I didn't really know, you know, how deep of a history it had.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, like I said, like I said, a lot of that time period when Ring of Honor was coming, you know, around, I wasn't watching wrestling. I was, you know, trying to, like I said, busy making, you know, families and doing things and, you know, trying to, you know, do a million other things that just had nothing to do with wrestling. So when I did came back, there's a lot of catch up. I mean, I've done some, I'd say maybe like 60% of the catch up. I'm still, you know, still trying to go back and watch shows and, you know, catch shows and find ways, you know, subscribing to different networks on and off.
With the amount of shows that happen on a regular basis nowadays, it'll be impossible to catch up with everything, you know, over the past few years. You know?
It is. I mean, one time I was just trying to just watch what was on for 1 week, and it was just like I have no time to do anything else.
Exhausting. It's a full-time job, you know.
It really is. It really is. But again, thank you for coming on. And like I said, you know, we'll keep an eye out and see. Hopefully, we see you on and see you soon wrestling. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, guys.
And thank you everybody home for watching. Have yourself a great weekend and week. Versace Stoner out.
Welcome to the Kill City Cup.